Hey everyone, welcome back to Land Investing Online, where we teach students how to profitably buy and sell vacant land. This is the simplest, least competitive, and most profitable sector of real estate. For more information, visit landinvestingonline.com to join our free Discord with tons of successful investors. Come learn from the best. Guys, if you found any value in any of our videos at all or this video, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We get a ton of value from this and really appreciate that. But I'm Daniel Apke, joined again by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Welcome back, Ron.
Hey Dan, good to be here.
Today's topic, how to scale your land flipping business. We've talked about this quite a bit in past episodes, but I want to dive in completely to scaling your land flipping business because there's a lot of people that we talk to and they're past the beginning stage and they want to know what's next. But before we get into that, let's go over a question from one of our students. How long did it take you to go full-time land investing to make a full-time income? Ron, do you want to take that?
Yeah, for sure. As we mentioned before, this is one of the more common questions we get, like, because everyone wants to be able to quit their job and be able to work from home. I think that's a really common thing, but it's easier said than done. Um, like I said, but we've said before, Daniel and I went full time into this from the get. And our goal, I mean, I don't know, we blew our first year goal out of the water. But our goal was to get full time where we can support ourselves within a year, I think. Maybe it was 6 months. Uh, it's realistic, I think, by yourself. If you're doing this by yourself with two people, obviously, you have to support two people, two families, two lifestyles. You can do this with one person by all means. I think I like saying 12 months because I don't want to be overly optimistic. I think as things change, things are going to go wrong when you're starting your land flipping business. It's just what happens to any business you start. But I think 12 months is very realistic to be making a full time, very comfortable income, and you'll feel comfortable quitting your job, opposed to like maybe I can make this happen. But 12 months is more than enough in my mind, Dan.
Yeah, 12 months is plenty. Let's see. So, I mean, we always say it takes about 6 months to start making real profit, but that doesn't mean necessarily paying. And it depends how much time you're spending on this, obviously, and how much you're putting in. 6 months, I've seen a lot of people do it, but to really start turning your profits and seeing the money come in. I mean, our first year or our first 6 months, I think we profited almost $400,000 or $500,000, if I'm correct, or so, at least in our pipeline. So after about 6 months of sending mail consistently, you'll start to really see that profit. 12 months, you'll have a lot of money coming in and out of your bank, and you'll be more than comfortable sitting as long as you follow our program and what we kind of teach and preach, which is consistency. But that's all we have on that subject. Let's move into the show. Today's topic, how to scale your land flipping business. So if your ears perked up for this topic, you're either doing very well at land and want to know what's next, or you're just planning for the future because you're so excited about getting started. So I think both new land investors and people who have been doing it a long time successfully can really find value from this. But the first advice I kind of want to throw out there is if you're new, you don't want to think of, obviously you want to think of scaling, but you don't want to think of, some of the techniques we talk about in here. The first part of this business is you got to learn all the pieces yourself, right? Even if you're not a data person, you got to learn the data, you got to learn the sales side, you got to learn the marketing, you got to learn title process, all of that. The most important part of this business before you can even think about outsourcing anything, you got to learn all the pieces yourself. Don't you agree?
100%. I think that's where I see a lot of mistakes come in. Like, how are you going to train someone to do something that you can't do yourself? You're just going to give them our course or something like that. Like, maybe that'll work. Um, but you still need some kind of if it's an employee that we're talking about, Dan, like you need to be able to train people to do something. Yeah, they're going to end up doing it better than you. If you're not a data person and they're a data person, they're going to end up doing it better than you, but you need to you need to understand it yourself. I think that's vital. Same thing with sales. If you're a data person, you're not a salesperson. Don't just hire a salesperson day one. One, it's going to kill your profit. Two, you're not going to know how to do it yourself. Like you need to know how to do it yourself before you can teach anyone or hire it out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because like we started hiring, I believe around really started hiring around a year ago, I believe. And now, after a year of them really taking over a lot of the processes, I'm looking back and I'm like, they're refreshing me how the process works now. At first, like I knew the whole process, how everything worked, and I still have a good sense of it, obviously. But there's certain like details that I forgot about. And it's interesting just seeing how much they've learned and how much I forgot because I've outsourced it and they're doing a really good job at it. So I don't need to, look at it as much. So I'm just starting to forget some of the details involved in some of our processes, which I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but it's kind of just, it's interesting that you can get to that point where you trust someone so much that you actually start to forget a little bit. Um, the next thing I'd mention on scaling, and we've talked about this a lot as well, and I have this written down, and there's a lot that goes into this. We have separate episodes on this, but it's finding a good partner if needed. So say you did the first part that we just talked about, you learned all the pieces yourself. Maybe you don't want to hire yet. Maybe you want to look for a partner that fits what you're looking for. Maybe they're more aggressive mindset, more aggressive with mail when you're more passive and you need that to balance you out. Maybe they're a salesperson and you're a data person, whatever it is. I would highly consider, if you have a good relationship with someone, maybe partnering up. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's just someone you've met. Don't don't rush into this. Listen to our other episode. We have a lot of details on this, but find a good partner if needed.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That can instantly scale. Like, yeah, you're going to be splitting profits or whatever you guys come up with. But that instantly, if they have the same drive and the same goals as you, like that's going to instantly scale your business. And it's not an employee that you need to pay every week or every 2 weeks. Like it's like someone who, whatever, you're going to split profits, but let's say you don't split profits for 3 or 6 months. So you guys continually reinvest your profits. Like that is very valuable because you have someone working full time with you, but potentially not taking any money out at that point. Yeah, that's a really good first step, I guess, after you kind of learn it. Yeah, some people go into the business and two people are very interested in the same time and they're partners from the start. Um, but yeah, like Daniel said, we have a lot of other content on partnerships and how to pick the right partner. So definitely listen to that.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing everyone's like, oh, then I have to split their profits or whatever. But like, if you look at not all of them, obviously, but so many of these successful um, entrepreneurs and business owners and people like Phil Knight and did Steve Jobs have a partner at one point? There's just so many
Yeah.
people out there. Zuckerberg had a partner at one point. All of these guys had partners to start. And I'm reading the book. I mentioned this in the last episode, Shoe Dog. It's a really long book, so I'm still reading it. It's a 14-hour read on Audible. But he started with a partner, and just because that partner had a vision and knew the shoes so much better than he did. He was a track coach at Oregon, his partner, and it was his coach actually who he partnered with. And he just had that whole vision of like what needs to be in a shoe and how a shoe should feel and all that. Um, so it's just interesting reading all these. I've been on a book binge the last few months, and it's just all these books, they all have partners. Even like everyone's watching the show. Some people can probably relate on WeWork. It's called We Crash, and it's on WeWork, the company with the what do they do? It's like the shared office spaces and all that, and they created the community. They were like one of the first ones to do that. And yes, it's about how they crashed the company pretty much, and it had a $45 billion valuation, and it was only worth $9 billion. And it's about how Adam Newman failed and all that. But at the same time, he had a partner, and he did get paid out $1.9 billion, and he did create this huge company that has thousands of locations now. And yeah, he might have done a lot of wrong things along the way, but it just brings me back to that partnership thing. Like you need to find someone who fits what you can't do or what you don't have the ability to do. The next thing I really have on here is, so you learned all the pieces yourself. You found a good partner if needed. Um, Next thing I have is outsource one thing at a time. What do you have to say about that, Ron?
Yeah, I had written down like eliminate time wasters, like be efficient, which kind of goes hand in hand with outsourcing. I think like there are jobs that I've really focused on this. I've talked about this a lot in the last 2 to 3 months. Things that I have taken off my plate. For example, like this podcast thing, as far as getting everything on YouTube and getting out to everywhere, like I was doing that myself up till last week, honestly. And I taught our VA how to do it, how to edit it on iMovie or whatever software he's using. And that was something that took 2 hours of my week. And I just thought like I can teach him probably in 2 hours. and it took 2 hours out of my week every single week. So in a year, that's 100 hours that I'm saving. Yeah, I'm going to have to look at his work, but maybe that's going to take 10 minutes opposed to 2 hours doing everything myself. Stuff I see, Daniel, that even if you're a data person, like scrubbing data is the number one thing in my mind. Like that should be the first thing you hire out, or whatever. You use Fiverr, or you use one of those. What are the other sites called, Dan? I don't know.
Upwork, Fiverr, onlinejobs.ph, whatever it is.
Yeah. Make a video on Loom. So what I did when I first, before we had a VA doing our scrubbing, what I did was made a video on Loom, and I just sent it on Fiverr or whatever it was to whoever I hired, and they would scrub my data. Again, the video might have taken 30, 40 minutes to make, but every time I scrub, it takes 30 to 40 minutes. So every time I send them something, it's saving me that and costing me whatever, $4 to $10, depending on the size. That's the number one thing, Dan. Is there something else you had in mind as far as like the first thing you should kind of outsource?
No, I think data is a good one because it takes time and it's super easy to outsource. That's a good one. I would definitely start there.
The answering service, maybe. I mean, answering service, some people do from the start. We urge you to answer some calls. We use Pat Live. I'm going to write that down so I can link that in there in the description.
It's just, isn't it just Land Investing Online /Pat Live?
I believe so. landinvestingonline.com/Pat Live, and they'll get you a discount if you do want to do that. Yeah, Pat Live's our answering service. So they answer all of our seller leads. And like we've talked about before, when we were answering calls ourselves, I think it went to Daniel first. If Daniel was already on the phone, it would go to me. And it would just take our entire day. Like we're sending 15 to 20,000 mailers and answering the phone ourselves. Like it was extremely, it's just wasting. Like you'd answer the phone and get yelled at for a couple minutes and then just, okay, sir, thank you for your call. And then 1 out of every 5 calls is an interested seller. Now we have all that being, Pat Live is taking care of all that. We'll read their notes and then make callbacks based on that. So I think those two things, Dan, are really the first things: data and an answering service.
Definitely. And you mentioned how the podcast and YouTube that you've been editing and throwing on there is taking 2 hours of your time a week. And that just brings me back to step one. You can't outsource that until you learn how to do it. Imagine Ron trying to find someone to do that when he doesn't even know what's going on. It just makes it so much harder. Instead of making a Loom video and going in and now just sending it to one of our it's a full-time employee for us already who's doing it, just teaching them to add on something to their plate. And now it saves his time and he's going to get good at it. And we keep adding small things. And now I'm like, let's get that subscribe button on there. Let's add a couple things in. You start with one thing and keep adding it on. You're not going to be perfect the first time. You can't just do it all right. I mean, do it all at once, really. It's just too much sometimes, but
Dan, and look at, if you guys go back to podcast number 1, just look at the quality of the podcast. Like if I would have just done that from the start, done one podcast, and then sent it to our VA, like we're going to have a crap quality podcast, and it's still got so much work to go. Like just look at the difference from number 1 to whatever this is, number 25, 30. It's come a long way, and we still got a long way to go, but it's something I'm going to keep on enhancing, and I can use those extra 2 hours to see what we can do to make it better, opposed to me actually being on my computer editing.
Yeah, something super. That was a really good example, though. The next thing I have, after outsourcing one thing at a time, I have, and this is something we preach and we say it all the time: send consistent and enough mail. You have to be consistent. You want to scale your land flipping business, you might be sending enough mail, but you got to send consistent mail. Don't just send 10,000 on the 1 month and then the next month you don't send any because you sent too many or whatever. Keep it very consistent. Maybe it's 6 to 10 every single month or whatever it is. And I don't want to talk too much about this because we talk about it all the time, but you have to send consistent and enough mail to scale your land business. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I kind of disagree with relation to the title of the podcast. Like this title of this podcast is not for if you want to be successful in land. It's scaling your land business. If you want to scale your land, like you're already sending consistently, hopefully, or you're planning on doing that. Like we talk about that over and over. If you want to scale your land business, send more mail consistently. Like you want to scale and grow. You have Pat Live now. You have an answering service now. Like send more mail, send 50% more mail, and you're going to get 50% more deals. Hopefully, even if you get 30% more deals, your profit is going to increase drastically. Obviously, consistency is so important in this, but hopefully we've hit on that so much. Send more mail if you're trying to scale your business up.
And we're going to keep hitting on that because I really want our members to be successful, and I see what creates success in this business, and that's why we keep hammering the same things over and over again, because we want everyone that's listening and everyone who's working with us to be successful. So we're going to keep hammering what we believe is going to make people successful. The next thing I have on here is specialize in something, and we've talked about that as well. So maybe you're sending a lot of mail, you're getting a lot of raw land back all over the country, not really specializing in anything, just specializing in buying and selling rural vacant land. Maybe now it's time to specialize in something. Go into that, Ron.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it's also important to not do that too soon. Like become an expert on buying and selling vacant land. Like what we say when specialized, like it's deals that are going to take longer. I'd say probably 6 month plus deals for the most part. Like sometimes landlocked properties, you can say that's a specialty, and that might just take 3 months or something. But when I think of specialty, I think of putting something on the land. I think of some kind of improvement. And those deals are going to have a greater profit margin, but they're also going to take longer to flip. So you don't want that. And Daniel's not saying that, but you don't want that to be your entire business. But let's say you have one deal going on every 6 months that's going to profit you 200 grand or something like that. Like that is a huge add-on to your business, and it's going to really help scale it. Whether it's putting a mobile home on the land or whatever, subdividing, you can make a ton of money subdividing. So I think that's good to have in your mind. I think, like we've talked about before, a lot of this is going to come naturally to you as you kind of see what you want to do. And you might have a deal that's like, this is perfect for this. And that's how you're going to naturally get into whatever, putting a mobile home on land. But yeah, I think that's a really good one but at the same time, don't make it your entire business.
Yeah, and then things will happen from there. I mean, it does a lot of things for your business. It, like we've always said, the more rifle approach you have, the more you can narrow something in, the harder it is for competition to come in and steal anything from you as well. Specialize in something diversifies your portfolio. You become an expert in something. It's just hard to replicate. That's what I mean by specialize. And I preach that a lot too, because who knows, the industry is really strong, but in 10, 20 years, if you have a specialty in one market and you're crushing infill lots and maybe putting a little mobile homes on them or doing something, I just threw that out there, whatever it is, like, it's just, that stuff's going to be very valuable in the future, I think. Also, like I said, or like Ron said, don't do this for your whole business. Maybe I'm a big believer in taking a percentage of what, what you're already doing. So maybe if you're doing $1 million a year in sales, maybe take 10 to 20% of your mail and try to focus that on these specialty things. So just take a certain percentage. Doesn't need to be 50% of your business. You don't need to go all in. Start with 10%, maybe 20%, and just start trying new things, testing new things. And that's what I also had on here is you got to continue to test, trial and error type stuff. You can only, I want to say, copy people for so long. You're going to have to kind of focus in on your own niches, I think, eventually. But yeah, continue to just test things and specializing in something, testing the market out, trying new things is really important for this business.
Yeah, I agree, Tim.
Awesome. Next thing I have, and this is the last thing, is you got to make sure you hire the right employees. And you can, I have continue to hire and outsource, but I want to emphasize hire the right people, because it's one thing just outsourcing and hiring, but it's another thing hiring the right people who are going to help you scale your business. And you talk how to scale your business is the title of this episode. Hiring the right employees is one of, if not the most crucial thing in business in general. I mean, I can go into this and there's books on this forever. But what do you have to say about that, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is number one, to be honest, Dan. Once you get to the point where you can, where you're like self-sustaining on yourself by yourself or with a partner or whatever, and you're ready, you'll know when it's time to hire an employee. It's scary because you're paying someone else. Figure out your process. Figure out. I think we've talked some about your core values. You figure out that, and you want to hire based on those. Like, what are you looking for? You got to really have it before you post that job up for a sales job. Like, you got to know what you want. Like, it's not that easy. First of all, you want to emphasize that in your post, like who you're looking for. And then you want to actually, when you're interviewing them, when you're going through resumes, you want to be able to understand or know in the back of your head before you look over resumes and go through interviews, like this person's going to work because he fits this, and this, opposed to like, yeah, I think it'll work. He seems to work hard. His other employers, past employers, seem to talk good about him. But you got to know what you want. Like, what do you want in a salesperson? There's different types of salespeople. There's those like really hard go getters and just like are overbearing. And so I'm on that spectrum when I do sales. I don't do it a ton anymore. And then you have those that kind of let the deals come to them, really relational types. So there's different types. Like, what kind of salesperson do you want? What kind of employee do you want? Have that in your mind before you actually go post the job.
Yeah, and what culture do you want to believe? Like Ron said, your core values, I mean, hire and fire based on those core values. And there's such a big difference from the entrepreneur who owns a $2 million business and the entrepreneur who owns a $1 billion business or hundreds of $1,000,000. And a lot of times the difference is they know how to surround themselves with the right people. I mean, you can only do so much work yourself. It's not that hard to start a $1 to $2 million business and profitable. Like, especially if you're replicating a industry that's already there, it's not, I don't want to say it's not hard. It's a grind. Of course, it's really hard, but taking your business from $1 million to hundreds of millions of dollars or $1 billion, that's a whole nother level. And those entrepreneurs that are doing that are very good with surrounding themselves with like-minded people and surrounding themselves with people who they know that they trust and they're going to grow the company. And it just goes back to these books I've been reading. They all have their team of people, and these guys are like talking at like 1 a.m. every night, and they're like on it, and they're like, oh, it's just crazy to hear how, their process, like going back to Phil Knight, and he had a group of 5 people that they called themselves the Shoe Dogs, and they just would be up every night talking to each other and going on and on. And it's such a cool culture that they built around that. But that's all I have to say on that. And that's my last point that I had. Do you want to add anything, Ron?
No, as far as with the hiring thing, I think just like you can't be scared to hire someone that's better than you. I think those are the companies that do the best. We have some really great employees right now that I'm really excited about, and excited for the future. Like, don't hire because you're scared that someone's gonna be better than you. Like, you want someone that's gonna be better than you and push you to be better. And you cannot grow to there's in this business there is just a cap, I think, Dan, and any business really, like, of what you can do by yourself or just you and one partner. Like, you need to be able to rely on other people to get jobs done. But no, I think that was a really good episode, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And also keep in mind, you don't need to scale your business if you don't want to. You can stay at $1 million of profit a year or whatever it is, or $500,000, whatever you want to do. You can stay there and do all the work yourself. It's whether you want to keep, pricing the mailers yourself and answering the calls yourself, or do you want to focus on hiring and building a culture and the real things that actually build a business? Building a business isn't learning how, to keep sending price and doing all this work yourself. Building a business, building a legitimate business is like scaling a business like this episode's, learning how to hire the right employees, hire the right culture, have that vision for the future. What markets are we going into? How are we getting more financing? How are we getting cheaper financing? All of those things. But that's all I have for this episode. It's been a good episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for joining. Don't forget, visit landinvestingonline.com. Join our free Discord. If you guys found any value from this podcast at all, or YouTube, please like and subscribe this channel. It means a lot to us. Hopefully we'll see you guys in the Discord. Thanks for joining. See you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.